Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? If you missed it earlier today, there was a little bit of breaking news from the New Orleans Saints, and it's that Kellen Mond has been waived. Now, I don't think this should come as a great surprise. By the way, it was Field Yates who had it first. So Field Yates had it first earlier, about 3:28 this afternoon. We were in hour one. So Kellen Mond and Tommy Kramer, the offensive lineman, were waived by the New Orleans Saints. Of course, the Saints had just recently signed Kellen Mond, and it was a camp arm situation, right? You get your starter in Derek Carr. You've got your experienced veteran backup in Nathan Peterman. You have Jake Haener, who's your project, and you were going to need some competition and somebody else that was going to be a camp arm, so you brought in Kellen Mond. Fine. Well, when you draft Spencer Rattler, that doesn't you no longer need, it doesn't necessitate having someone like Kellen Mond around anymore, because you'll have Haener and Rattler, Peterman and Carr. Those are going to be your four for camp, and that makes a lot of sense. I was looking at, I was reading this piece at ESPN.com, and it was anonymous coaches talking about draft prospects. And it was one for each team. And with the Saints, the conversation went to Spencer Rattler, naturally, as you would imagine. He was one of the more intriguing prospects in the entire draft. I'm not saying that as a Saints fan. That's just, this was a guy that we've all known his name since he was a senior in high school, and he was the number one quarterback in the country. And he was at one point a projected first-round pick. You get the story by now. So yes, the fact that Spencer Rattler fell to round 5 was the big day 3 story, and it's one of those things everybody's going to follow. Well, the write-up read, South Carolina quarterback Spencer Rattler's fall to the 5th round was in part a need issue. This is something we talked about. 2 teams extremely high on him, the Atlanta Falcons and Denver Broncos, drafted quarterbacks in the top 12 that essentially left Las Vegas, who had made the calculation, Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew combo, alleviated their need to reach for a quarterback. So essentially what they're saying is, it's what we said. You had 6 quarterbacks go in the top 12 picks. So all the quarterback-needy teams took their quarterback in the top 12 picks. So who else needed a quarterback? It's certainly not say you couldn't draft one like the Saints. I mean, you have a starter in Derek Carr, but where are you going to make the investment in that pick? Well, it didn't come to round 5. That's in part why Rattler lasted so long. And this write-up reads, make no mistake, Rattler is not perceived as 138 picks worse than Bo Nix. Some evaluators had him awfully close to the same tier as Nix. One of the things we talk about every year in the draft is sort of the luck or unluck of that draft. Brian Thomas Jr. is the example I've used a ton in this year. A year ago, Brian Thomas would have been the first wide receiver in the draft. You didn't have a receiver come off the board last year until the 20s. Brian Thomas, last year, would have been the first receiver taken in the draft. This year, was he the 5th? I mean, sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But if Bo Nix went 12th overall, and there are teams that had Nix and Rattler in the same tier, you're telling me, in a way, we already know this. I'm going to verbalize it. In some respects, you had a first-round talent on your hands sitting there in round 5. The other thing that was interesting, and this was a coach who was quoted with one team who said about the issue of Rattler with the documentary when his high school QB1, there was some scuttle after the draft that that's the reason that Rattler dropped, because of the way he was perceived in that documentary. This source, again, ESPN.com, a source with a team, an unnamed team, we don't know. Quote, really didn't harp on it much. It wasn't a big thing. He's matured a lot since then, like we all have. If there was a camera in my face when I was in high school, I wouldn't have looked great either. He was impressive in his interviews. Spencer Rattler talked about this after the draft when he was picked by the Saints. He talked about the adversity that he's gone through and how it sort of matured him.
I think it helps me coming into this level, being able to experience a little adversity early on in my college career, I think that helps, because as a quarterback, especially at this level, you're going to experience adversity if you want it or not. So I think having success, having adversity, that helps shape you as a player in person. And, I wouldn't change a thing about nothing throughout college. So I'm ready for the next step. I know I'm prepared.
So Kellen Mond's out. The quarterback room is already thinned. You've got Carr, who's your starter. You've got Peterman, who's your veteran backup. Then you've got Haener, who you drafted last year, and Rattler, who's the kid oozing talent, who maybe potentially could end up being a starting quarterback in the NFL. As a matter of fact, Dennis Allen was asked that point blank after the draft. Is there a world where Spencer Rattler could become a starter?
Do you see him as potentially developing into a starter one day? Is that?
Yeah, I definitely think he's got the ability to develop into that. He's got a lot of work to do, but I think he's got that developmental quality to him. Yeah, absolutely.
If they feel that way, then you're going into camp this year, and this is going to be a massive storyline. Like, I could throw a dart, or I could just get my pen and scribble out what I think the top camp storylines are going to be, right? O-line is going to be number one. Like, who wins the jobs on the offensive line? The safety battle clearly is going to be another one with Marcus May out. Who's going to win that job? The wide receiver depth chart. Like, I think we have a good idea of who the four are going to be, but the depth chart there is going to be interesting. Like, those storylines are there. But file it away. The number 2 quarterback is going to be massive because most teams, your backup quarterback isn't a project player. Most teams, your backup quarterback is there to serve your franchise quarterback, to be another eye on the sidelines. What do you see? Help them watch film. And then if something happens to your starter, keep the train on the track so the whole thing doesn't collapse. Like all those years with Drew Brees. Remember, he had Mark Brunell backing him up. Then he loved Chase Daniel. Drew loved Chase Daniel, not because Chase Daniel was ever going to be a starter in the league, but because he trusted Chase Daniel as a veteran presence who knew how to watch film and was like him a lot. They spoke the same language. There was another eye on the field when he came to the sideline. I mean, McCown for a while there with the Saints as well. Look at all the backups they had for Drew. That's the role Peterman is supposed to fill on this team. I mean, Nathan Peterman, no one is ever going to confuse Nathan Peterman with like a dominant or a starting quarterback in the NFL. But this is a guy who throughout his NFL career has played in 15 games. He's made 5 starts. Again, I'm not telling you he's got a world of experience, but he's been around the league now for a half dozen years. He's been with Buffalo and the Raiders and the Bears. So he's seen a lot, and that's another good pair of eyes that can be an asset to assist Derek Carr. Well, if you feel like Rattler can be a starter, then you're not going to risk Rattler on the practice squad. So this camp is going to be fascinating for that because I think Rattler is going to be ahead of Jake Haener, period, paragraph, no questions. The question is, can Rattler beat out Peterman? Because if they go through camp and preseason and see something in Rattler, then you're not going to risk cutting Rattler, sign him to the practice squad, and have someone sign him away to their active 53. That's what happened with Ian Book. Ian Book used a 4th-round pick on him. You cut him, you were going to sign him to the practice squad. The Eagles signed him to their active roster. One of your 4th-round picks gone. You're not going to risk that with Rattler if you think there's a future there as a starter. That's why there's going to be a fascinating training camp for Spencer Rattler, the New Orleans Saints, the number 2 quarterback job. Remember, the Saints did the same thing with Taysom Hill. They played Taysom Hill in a preseason game with Green Bay. Green Bay cut him, signed him to the practice squad, and the Saints were like, we'll take him, thank you. Sean, I have an idea for that. Backup quarterback might emerge for the future of the organization as the second most important position battle in this training camp behind only the offensive line. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.